Lucas Diñez saca, pone el centro raso. ¡Ojo, peligro! ¡El remate! ¡Gol! ¡Gol de Trossard! ¡Gol del Arsenal! En la primera que toca el belga. Cañonazo en el marcador del Arsenal. En el 67 se adelantan los Gunners. Villa 0, Arsenal 1.
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from I've glitched out already.
It felt like someone had pulled the plug on you there.
James from Gunnerblog, a very fucking goodly morning to you.
Maybe it's been a good weekend. Maybe that's the effects of a good weekend.
Do you know what it is? I did have some spicy margaritas yesterday.
Delicious.
I'm sort of on my own here because my wife is away. She's down doing book things and travelling things in the west of Ireland. So I'm here on my own with the dog. So yesterday I just sort of watched movies and watched football, played with the dogs, had a spicy margarita here, spicy margarita there, ordered a kebab. Not the sort of thing that I would do normally.
The bachelor lifestyle.
Exactly. I didn't really enjoy the kebab. It wasn't that nice, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
But I watched Godzilla -1. I watched some of the Weird Al movie. So
I've heard that's good.
It's kind of dumb but funny. You know, that kind of way. Yeah. Don't take it seriously in any way.
Sort of a parody of a biopic.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that would make sense. Sense, all right. So, So maybe it's just sort of, having an effect this morning. I'm not sure, but,
Well, hey. Listen, I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. You were right to. It was a great weekend for Arsenal.
It certainly was. A lovely win, revenge on Aston Villa, some hijinks on the pitch, some nice goals, and 3 points to take back to North London. Very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
I much prefer it to that thing of us losing to them twice in a season.
Yes.
That's for sure.
100%. How was
your
weekend?
Three precious points.
Yeah.
They're the margins, mate.
That's it. Fine margins indeed. How was your weekend? All good?
Yes, all good. Arsenal won. Manchester United lost.
That was funny. I got a lot of people saying, was that James? James, how did you turn up at the Amex Stadium?
The guy in the Seagull mask.
Yeah, Saka's teddy bear on the Discord says, James, be honest. Was that you at Brighton? And we also had J Mart.
No comment.
J Mart 91 says, can James wear the duck mask to the Emirates next time he's there? As funny as the Seagull mask was, we need the duck to prevail. We need you when we play Manchester United to be in the background.
That's true. I think, my seat's not well positioned for that.
But don't we know, doesn't Tayo and the Tuesday Club guys, don't they sit like right behind the opposition dugout? Couldn't we arrange
surely they
something?
can sub me in for a day.
Exactly. We can do like a what do you call it? Like a student swap type thing.
Obviously you could just put someone else in the mask, but it wouldn't be the same, Andrew.
No, you carry that duck mask with a sort of gravitas
exactly.
that I'm not sure Alan Davies could really pull off.
It's not as easy as it looks. It takes a special performer. You can tell Alan Davies that from me. Years of training to inhabit that bird. Properly.
Standing in front of the mirror, just looking. Yeah. Are you cracking at me?
Yeah,
you cracking at me?
I enjoyed the Seagull. Shout out to the Seagull. Maybe it'll become a theme. Maybe ornithologists will be spotting different birds at different Premier League games.
There's only so many birds you can have, though. Crystal Palace have an eagle, don't they? So we get some guy in a terrifying eagle mask at the next Crystal Palace game. That would be something.
That's true. That's true. And who can forget the toilet duck itself? We'll be playing in the shadow of the toilet duck in a couple of weeks' time.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, look, let's get on with this then, because it was a very interesting game against Aston Villa. I think it was...
Loads happened, Andrew.
And loads happened. And
well, sorry, that's wrong.
Go on.
No, some big incidents happened, and then for other periods of time, not a lot happened.
Well, that was it. I was expecting this game to be a bit more... I'm not sure if blood and thunder is quite the way I would put it, but I did wonder how it was going to go based on what we saw from Villa last season, what we saw from Arsenal last season, this whole revenge narrative running through it. I was sort of expecting Arsenal to come charging out of the blocks and maybe have a real go early on, try and silence the crowd at Villa Park. But I think it was something akin to two boxers who were very cautious of each other. Neither wanted to throw a punch in case they got caught with, a sucker punch, an uppercut somewhere. And that seemed to me, anyway, I think we were talking during the game going, this is kind of a strange game. And I think it was, in some ways down to the way Villa approached it, the way Villa set themselves up tactically to deny us space to pass through the midfield, and Arsenal not necessarily being willing to take too many risks in that regard as well. So I'm not saying they cancelled each other out, but there was an element of these two sides just sort of tiptoeing around each other for a bit.
Definitely. I thought of the boxing analogy as well. Sometimes in a boxing match, the first round is literally just two guys sort of moving around each other, just being like, okay, what's he trying to do? What's he trying to do? And it felt like that. The first hour of the game was probably most sort of aptly characterised by that little section at the start of the second half. Do you remember when we were just passing it across the defence and back? Yeah. And Villa were just sort of shuttling back and forth. It was surreal, actually. Last time I remember seeing that in a game is like towards the end of a Serie A game where everyone's like suspiciously happy with a draw.
Do you know what it reminded me a little bit of the Community Shield? Not last season, season before. Remember when Arsenal just said to Man City, have the ball?
Yeah.
Have it. Yeah. Because we got caught out at the end of the season before. Remember those balls over the top to De Bruyne, to Haaland, and clearly Mikel Arteta said, no, that's not going to happen again. So when Manchester City have the ball, we'll shuttle back into our defensive formation. We will work hard. We'll cut off the passing lanes, and Man City will just keep possession, and it will be completely sterile possession. I think there was something similar in the way Villa set up against us, where, that's what we had. We had a lot of possession. I think we were perhaps the team, I didn't look at the stats, but certainly the team with the most possession in the first half, but without doing a great deal with it.
Yeah, and Villa are good at that. They are a very organised team, very physical team. I know you said you expected Arsenal to come out the blocks. I expected a bit more threat from them in the early stages. They certainly have the capacity to do that. But they lost Matty Cash very early on. I think that was about 15 minutes in. He went off. We'd spoken about that right-hand side and what a threat it can offer. So maybe, that impacted their performance a little bit. I think as became clear as the game went on, this probably wasn't Ollie Watkins at his very sharpest.
No. Thankfully.
Yeah, thank goodness. But yeah, I agree. It was two opponents sort of feeling each other out and sort of, it felt like a question of who would make the first mistake.
Yes. Well, we did have a chance before that first mistake came into play. There was a good move and Bukayo Saka had a good shot, which I think produced a very, very good save from Emi Martinez. But the big chance, of course, of that first half was Ollie Watkins when Gabriel got robbed / fouled. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because when the referee's given a free kick a few minutes earlier for what Emi Martinez did, which is basically fall over in the box with nobody anywhere near him, and the referee instantly gave a free kick, and then he doesn't give a free kick for that, you're kind of going... What's the rule here? What's a foul anymore? It's one of those where I feel like it's a bit six of one, half a dozen of the other. I think if the foul had been given, there wouldn't have been too many complaints from a Villa perspective, but he didn't give a foul, and obviously Villa worked it to Ollie Watkins, who, 99 times out of 100, I think you back to score there.
99 and 99.9, really. I mean, I couldn't believe it that he missed that opportunity. Very grateful for it, because it would have changed the course of the game. But I think when you win a big game, the margins are going to be super fine, as we mentioned. And occasionally you get a little slice of luck. And I think that was a slice of luck in our favour.
Yes.
I don't think he'll miss many more chances quite like that this season.
No, it was a real let-off for sure. But, sometimes that's what happens. It's think about the... what am I thinking of here? Van Nistelrooy penalty, for example, in the Invincible season.
Absolutely. Or think about Aston Villa beating us at the Emirates and how many chances we missed, before they went and won that game. These are the margins, right? This is how it works. But they went in our favour on that occasion. We still had to capitalise and go on to win the game, and we did do that.
Yes. What else in that first half where it was cagey? Obviously, there was the Ben White incident,
of course,
which I didn't think it was possible for me to love Ben White any more than I already did. But when he did that, I was like, oh yeah, that is like, I mean, I just love it on every level. There is no part of me that thinks he shouldn't have done that. I was just like, I was so happy he did it, because McGinn is a guy, who throws his weight around. Most of his weight, of course, is in his backside, but he certainly throws it around and gets stuck in, and he's a physical kind of a player. I think, to be fair to McGinn, at least, he sort of got up and didn't roll around like he'd been, absolutely destroyed by what Ben White did. But he started it. He booted the ball at Saliba, so he can't complain when Ben White boots the ball right back at him.
It was interesting, actually. I was chatting to the Athletics Villa correspondent about it, and he immediately said, this is what McGinn does when he thinks the team need a lift. So apparently it's quite regular that if the team aren't really firing, he'll do something like this to kind of energise the crowd. Yeah. Which makes a ton of sense, really. And I suppose slightly recontextualises what looks like pure stupidity on his part. I think it did backfire, because what it did was light a fire under William Saliba, who, I think went on to produce an extraordinary tackle in that second half and have a very good game generally. But we'll speak about David Raya, no doubt, and we'll praise his reflexes and his reaction times. But the reflexes and reaction time of Ben White on this occasion to, to get to that ball and smash it back at John McGinn.
The accuracy.
Was second to none.
The accuracy as well. Just right there, right into the midriff. Just perfect. Absolutely perfect. I love that about this team, though. I love that they have each other's backs. In situations like this, the first thought is like, right, you've done that to my mate. You're going to get a bit back. And I really enjoy that about this team, because, there were periods in, Arsenal's history where we haven't necessarily stuck up for each other in the way that you would expect, True. True. And I don't know if that's, the particular players or the culture of the team at the time or whatever it might be. But, I remember incidents where, something would happen and there would be an Arsenal player with nobody around them and they'd be surrounded by opposition players. That doesn't happen anymore. I think there is something, beyond how funny it was to see Ben White do that. It does speak about the culture of this team, right? It speaks about the culture of the club right now, that, if you try and, push us around, you will get some back and you'll get it back straight away. So above and beyond just how funny it was to see Ben White do that and then get involved in the melee and then just sort of walk away laughing to himself, which was very, very funny as well. There is something a little more serious to it, which I think we can enjoy on a different kind of level, because, being pushed around, being intimidated, it is part of professional football. And this is a team that absolutely refuses to allow that to happen.
Yeah. shows great camaraderie, team spirit, and just a bit of fight. I think that matters too. You're not going to be bullied. You're not going to roll over. If you dish some out, we're going to give a bit back. And there are a few better at it than Ben White. I also love it sort of cynically from Ben White's perspective, because in doing that, he's like, he knows, well, if you're not booking McGinn, you can't book me. Do you know what I mean? He's kind of granted immunity almost by what McGinn has done.
Yeah.
So it's literally a free hit. Well, good on him for taking it.
There wasn't much more that went on in that first half.
No, we had like a couple of moments. There was an early breakaway where Martinelli didn't make the right choice or execute the right thing. There was one where Havertz got played in behind by Declan Reiss. Do you remember that? It was a really nice pass down the line, but again, he just sort of squared it into a Villa defender's feet. There were moments, but nothing apart from that Saka chance we were really able to convert into a good opportunity.
Yes. So the big moment, the other big moment from a Villa perspective was fairly early, about 10 minutes into the second half, when there was a shot from outside the box. Was it Onana? I can't remember who took the shot, but it deflected off Gabriel. Raya backpedaling, the ball came off the bar, rebounded in front of the goal, and for all the world you're thinking, well, fuck, we're done here, because there's no way Ollie Watkins is going to miss from there. And I accept, some of the comments about how he could have aimed for a different part of the goal, but I don't want to take anything away at all from David Raya, because the speed at which he gets back up, not just to make the save, but to push the ball away from the other Villa player who was standing right there, who would have got a tap in. If Raya hadn't got a strong enough hand on that, if he just touched it or fingertipped that ball, there's another guy there who would have just stuck it in the back of the net. I think it was Morgan Rogers, actually. So what do you make of that moment? What do you make of that save from Raya, which I think, is so eye-catching it could go down as one of the great saves by an Arsenal goalkeeper?
Yeah, I think it's certainly in the conversation. I think it's an extraordinary save. And it's the reaction time, really, between him being on the ground and then suddenly being on his feet and able to plunge to his left to keep it out. I mean, from a Villa perspective, I think you're going to say that's a bad miss. But in Watkins' defence, as he goes to strike that ball, what he sees is a goalkeeper crumpled on the ground.
Yes.
Who's just been beaten by a shot that's hit the bar. And 9 times out of 10, that keeper's staying there. So you have got an empty net to just side foot it into. So I can understand him thinking, well, I'll just make some contact with this and that'll be enough. All he's thinking is keep it controlled, don't sky it, don't put it wide.
Yeah.
If I hit the net, it's a goal.
Yeah, get it on target.
If it's on target, it's a goal. And that's what everyone in that stadium is thinking, I'm sure. So what Raya produces as a reaction is superb, really. And, a lot of goalkeepers, I think, would give up on that. Honestly, I think there are plenty of keepers who would think, I'm beaten here. In some cases, they'd be right, but Raya doesn't. And he shows brilliant agility. This is what keepers work on, day in, day out. Hours and hours and hours of it. I mean, it's a weird job being a goalie, because the training sessions are a nightmare. You spend the whole time hitting the ground. It's painful, but they do it, right? They harden their bodies and they do it time after time after time for moments like this. So hats off to him. It's a stunning save, and the second week in succession that he's done it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Like, you can have a conversation maybe about... do we need to talk about why our goalkeeper is that busy or having to make those saves? And I think that's perfectly fair. But, there are going to be days when David Raya has very little to do. As the season goes on, there will be games where he is peripheral in the sense of how much he's involved, because we'll probably be a bit more dominant in certain games. But, over the course of a season, you need everybody to contribute, from strikers to defenders, midfielders, wingers, all of those things. And goalkeeper, if your goalkeeper is the guy who can make the difference in a game, not the only one, by the way, somebody else came on and made a big difference in this game from an Arsenal point of view. But in moments like that, if your goalkeeper is the guy to do his job as well as he can do it, then that can be the difference between 1 point or 3 points or no points. I do wonder about how the trajectory of this game would have gone with Villa going a goal up at home again. That would have played into our minds. We did not have a lot on the bench from an attacking perspective, and that's probably something we'll chat about a bit later on as well. So in terms of the context of that game, it's a huge moment and an extraordinary piece of skill and reaction time and goalkeeping from Raya. I think it's you're going to be hard pressed to find a better, more spectacular save will happen over the course of the season. But as a piece of goalkeeping, having tried to get the first ball and then fallen, reacted, got up, and the strength at which he pushed that ball away, I think all of it just makes for like a 10 out of 10 piece of goalkeeping for me.
Yeah, I was really worried he was going to get Emi Martinez. When that ball sort of deflected onto the bar, I thought it was going to come off the bar and maybe hit him and go in. So he avoided that fate. That's a fate reserved for certain people. But he not only avoided it, but he responded brilliantly. Proximo would be proud, right? Strength and honour to the Spaniards.
He won the crowd.
He's certainly winning the crowd right now. But fantastic save. And I think you make a good point. Had that goal gone in, the first goal in these games is absolutely huge. And I think we'd be viewing this performance through a very different lens, had that goal gone in. We're all full of cheer today, and it was a great result. But I don't think it was a great performance particularly. No, and I think it's a performance that is still early season post summer tournament in terms of our own fluency, our own control of certain aspects of the game, what we created, etc., etc. But this is why, everybody is important in a team. You can't necessarily prioritize one person over another. You're always looking for the striker to get you the goals, but on a day where it could be tight, your goalkeeper is maybe the guy who will make a difference. And I think we saw that with Raya. And I think as well, when we sort of look beyond that, Villa did make a couple of changes, and I think in midfield in particular, I think we found it a little bit difficult when Villa ran at us. Thomas Partey, who obviously made a big contribution with the goal late on, but Thomas Partey and Declan Rice had their problems with Morgan Rogers, who he was really good.
He was excellent. He was a really, really dynamic presence in that Villa midfield. And he did get beyond Partey quite a few times. He did get beyond Reiss a couple of times. Reiss, I think, got a yellow card for bringing him down maybe in the first half. I can't remember if it was first half or I think it was first half, where he got beyond Partey, or got beyond Reiss, got beyond Partey. Reiss got back and had to have a nibble and take him down. So there were aspects of our own performance where I think we were struggling with some of what Villa brought to the table. And it did feel like after that Raya save, when Villa made a couple of changes, that we absolutely had to do something to change our own dynamic. And obviously, Mikel Arteta turned to the bench and turned to Leandro Trossard in order to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think that was a great surprise to anybody. I mean, I continue to be quite surprised that Trossard hasn't started either of these two
games. I agree.
And Martinelli, I think, wasn't making the most of... I mentioned Matty Cash going off. I mean, Villa brought on an 18-year-old as his replacement at fullback. And I think, the hope would have been that Martinelli would have been able to kind of, I think, get more out of that flank during that time. But when Trossard comes on and, well, talk about immediate impact. I mean, he scores with his first touch. But the whole cameo from him was excellent, I thought.
Did you watch the Sky interview afterwards?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting the way he talked about watching the game from the bench and what he was observing from the bench. And he said that when he kept, basically I'm paraphrasing, but he came on and immediately had a word with Gabriel and told Gabriel to look for him in the space behind the fullback. That is where he had seen space for him to operate in, which I thought was fascinating. He's an experienced player. He can see... what's been going on the pitch, where there might be areas that he could exploit and get into and get on the ball and cause Villa some damage. And that's exactly what he did. Gabriel, for the second goal, I think Gabriel plays a lovely pass over the top for Trossard, whose first touch is, superb, drives into the box, ball across, which didn't come to anything, but it came back to Saka. Saka then played it to Partey, who scored the goal. Emi Martinez got big hands on it, but couldn't keep it out, which I think makes the goal even more enjoyable for me. I do like a nice clean one in the top corner, but if a goalkeeper like Emi Martinez fumbles it into the net, I'm all right with that. But it did show what Trossard was talking about there. There was another one as well, if you remember, where another ball into that same sort of area. I think he played a first time pass into Declan Reiss. Declan Reiss took it on, laid it back for Martin Odegaard to blast over the bar. What's going on with Martin Odegaard and missing chances at Villa Park, by the way?
Vintage Odegaard, wasn't it? Vintage.
What
Odegaard
is it? Is there like an ancient Norwegian burial ground at that end of Villa Park? I think under
that penalty
something?
Spot, something like that.
Holy moly.
I feel like he's missed that exact chance at that stadium at that end before.
I think he has. Andrew Allen did either a tweet or a thread or both. I'm not sure of chances that he has had at Villa Park, and there must be like 3 or 4 in that area. Yeah, 5 major misses to his name at their place, says Andrew. So I don't know what that is, but that should have been 3-0. But going back to where it came from, it was Trossard getting into those spaces and delivering quality, which ultimately was the undoing of Aston Villa.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the touches you mentioned there was that little touch pass onto Reiss, which was so delicate and beautifully done. But, that point about watching from the sidelines and seeing where the opportunity lay. I mean, is that just a mark of his experience, and football intelligence as well, don't get me wrong, but, he is the older man, the more mature player for that position, and, clearly was able to read the situation, read the scenario and exploit it.
Yeah.
And he's just so good. I mean, it defies analysis at a certain point, because it's like, well, he's just really good at scoring goals. I don't really know what more to say about it than that.
I mean, what did you make of the celebration? Because obviously there was a lot of chatter about the celebration, and maybe he's just making a slight point to Mikel Arteta. Mikel Arteta says he hates being on the bench. He doesn't like it one bit, which is fairly obvious.
Yeah.
Has he played himself into the starting 11 for the game against Brighton? Or is there something to be said for, his qualities as an impact player from the bench? The more he does this, the more useful he might be in those scenarios. It's an interesting one. I understand. But personally, I think he's played himself into the team for the game against Brighton, because, if you come off the bench and you have an impact like that, and what an impact, because he absolutely changed the dynamic of our performance completely. It's very difficult for one player to come on and make such a significant impact, I think, in such a big way. So from my perspective, I think he's played himself into the team for the game against Brighton, because, he's come on, said, look, this is what I can do. If you put him on the bench after that, I don't think you're managing that situation right,
Yeah.
I think you have to reward the endeavour and what he did.
I do think fundamentally selection has to be underpinned by some kind of meritocracy, right? And I think if Trossard doesn't start the next game, that begins to get called into question. I know it's not quite as straightforward as that, because him and Martinelli are such different players in some ways, and Arteta may feel that one is particularly suited to an opponent, but I just think Trossard is right now. It's just difficult to look beyond him. I think he needs to play. I think he will play against Brighton, and I think that celebration was pointed. We had a few questions today which were kind of like, oh, is he unhappy? Is he going to look to move? I don't think anything like that is, in question. I just think that's how a player should feel.
Yeah.
That's how you want a player to feel. And that's how you want a player to respond. It's all very well being disheartened and downcast and angry because you're not picked. But when you get your chance, you have to prove your point. You have to take it. And he absolutely did that at Villa Park. So I think he's done more than enough. And I think it may be at the point where maybe he's a bit. Maybe we as a fan base undervalue him as well. I think we're kind of like, oh, Trossard scored again. But when you look at what he's doing, who's been a better signing than Leandro Trossard? I mean, he's just made an immense impact.
Yeah, of course. And when you consider the bullet that we dodged in order to sign Leandro Trossard, it's quite incredible. What about this, though? This I just might as well do this question because it was here. Invinciblog says, good morning. I think it's time for football fans to get over the idea that starting a football match is a due recognition of a player's superiority. Certain selections, for instance, starting Martinelli and finishing with Trossard, are better for the team by making us stronger in the volatile final minutes. Results have shown this, and that's what matters to Arteta. The deserves to start paradigm is broken, in my humble opinion. So, this idea that Martinelli can, do what he does for an hour and then bring Trossard on, I sort of get it, but I think it does overlook to some extent the fact that Martinelli isn't quite doing as much as we would want him to do in those opening 60 minutes as well. You can make that point. He can run the defender, he can tire them out, and then in the final stages, Trossard comes on and maybe benefits a little bit from that. But I think it's also fair to say that Martinelli is still waiting for that spark to find the form that we've seen from him in the past.
Yeah, and I think Mikel Arteta, if he could, would want to win games as early as possible. Right? Maybe it's not realistic, but I'm sure he'd rather win a game in the first half than the last 20 minutes, particularly if you want to sustain a title challenge, a Champions League challenge, domestic cup runs. You want to win games early. So you've got to have the players from the start that you think give you the best chance to do that. Obviously, he picked Martinelli for a reason. He obviously believes that he can help him do that. But it's a really interesting point about, Is it true that starting is necessarily the commendation it once was? Do footballers have to kind of get over their egos around who starts and who comes off the bench? Maybe so, but I doubt very much that's going to happen anytime soon. I still think every footballer, even the greatest of super subs, even Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in his time at Manchester United or whoever it might be, they all want to start, right? And they're all disappointed if they don't start. And I think convincing them otherwise, you can call them finishers or whatever you want. You can explain why their role is important. At the end of the day, when that team is written up on the whiteboard with 11 on it, that's where they want to be.
Yes, exactly. They all want to play, they all want to start, and they all think they should start and are good enough to start. And, that's kind of what you need. It's then down to the manager to make the decisions based on, the opposition, the system, the tactics, whatever he's got going on. But certainly, based on what he did at Villa Park, I would be very, 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 very surprised if Trossard didn't start against Brighton.
Just a point on a sort of Trossard versus Martinelli, which, I think is going to be a talking point. Was a talking point at the end of last season and will be going forward. But whenever I watch Martinelli at present, I feel like I'm watching a player kind of act out tactical instruction. And when I watch Trossard, I watch someone who, it feels like watching someone who kind of is sort of able to disregard that at moments. I'm not saying that is what's happening, but that's what it looks like to me. It looks like Martinelli is someone who's been kind of inhibited by a role. And Trossard looks like someone who goes, well, I know that is the role, but I'm going to do this now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a sort of liberty in the way Trossard plays, which was something that was really characterised in Martinelli. But I feel like, I don't know if that makes any sense. I just feel like he looks like someone who's kind of become quite, like when you go bowling and they put the guards up on the side. You know what I mean?
No.
Okay.
I don't really go bowling very often.
You don't go bowling?
No.
Okay. I mean, no, neither do I, but I still I go often enough to have a frame of reference for that.
What, do they like put things up so the ball doesn't go into the gullies?
The gutter, yeah, exactly.
Gutter.
So it just sort of bounces along the channel.
Is that not called cheating?
Yes, I think it's mainly for like children and people who are very bad at bowling.
Right.
Both of which I've been at different times in my life. And so that's how I know about it.
But I mean, is what you're saying basically, Martinelli, like, does it come down to what they can produce in those final moments, that final action, that last pass, that run, that touch, which I think with Martinelli, what we're seeing is a player who is low on confidence, low on form, who when he gets into those positions, it seems to me is slightly stricken by doubt. Like there's nothing instinctual about what Martinelli is doing, whereas it's all instinct with Trossard because he's confident enough in what he can do in those situations to pull it off.
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. I also just feel like Martinelli looks like he's sort of thinking, well, I know I need to track back. I know I need to hold the width. You know I need to create the overlap. And Trossard, again, I'm not saying this is what's happening. This is what I see. Looks like a player who's thinking, how do I score? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a kind of sort of gleeful selfishness about it at times. Like, I feel like because maybe it comes from age and experience and being 28 and thinking, I need to do this now. Just knowing, like, what he needs to do on the pitch without having to be told. I feel like, and that could be form, confidence, 100 things, but Trossard just seems like he's in that flow state and Martinelli's not. And it doesn't mean he won't get back there, but that is the way it is right now.
Yeah. Well, it's the other side of it is it's a slight gauntlet being thrown down not from Trossard to Martinelli, but I think it shows Martinelli, you've been in the starting lineup. You might lose your place now for the next game. This is what you need to do. These are the Foganes standards,
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed, by the way, while Trossard was doing his kind of moody non-celebration, Saliba was going, aren't you going to do the eye thing?
Do it! Do the eye!
Do the eye thing! Do the eye thing! And eventually he sort of like, he did like a sort of moody version of it, didn't he? Where it was like,
cursory
really deliberately did the eye thing. I'm doing it now.
Yeah, look.
I'm sure you're all doing it listening.
That was very funny. But a huge impact. Like we said, Trossard involved in that second goal as well. Saka with an assist, another assist to his name this early in the season. Partey with the strike and Martinez with the not save. And that was 2-0. Should have been 3-0, as we said, with Odegaard. I did wonder when Odegaard missed that chance. I was like, like 2-0's fine. It's probably safe. But if they get one, we're going to have that thing again. Those last few minutes are going to be terrifying. And there was a real moment of danger in our box, which the aforementioned William Saliba, do you remember that one Hector Bellerin chased back against, was it Swansea, I think, years ago?
Right.
And he got back to sort of clear a ball off the line, which he had absolutely no right to do. This is when Hector was, as fast as anybody in the Premier League before the injuries, robbed him of a yard or two. And he made this incredible recovery run to get back and either make a tackle or clear the ball off the line. There might have been a couple of those, actually. But Saliba, the way he ate up the ground in that moment to get back on the Villa player, I can't remember who it was. Was it John Duran? I think. Not sure. But he made an amazing tackle, which Raya then pushed around the corner. And I think that's another demonstration of a characteristic of this team that I really like, which is that they hate conceding goals. They absolutely hate it. Any chance they get to snuff out the opposition or snuff out an opposition chance, they fucking live for that. Gabriel and Saliba live for that kind of stuff. We might make a tackle and it goes out for a corner and Gabriel's like, yeah, high-fiving. And it was the same with Saliba in that moment as well. He celebrated that tackle like he scored a goal.
Yeah, it was so good, that tackle. And he's quick, Saliba. We've seen that before. One of the things that really stood out from that loan season with Marseille was a tackle where he raced back and dispossessed Kylian Mbappe. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
Yeah, quite viral in the Arsenal community. And he is rapid over kind of 10 to 15 yards. He showed that there. But it's more the mentality aspect that, like you, I love. And it was a big moment because, it might have created a bit of a nervy finish. Away from home, full stadium. Although I think it had begun to empty out, to be honest, by the time we got the second goal. So, yeah, brilliant from Saliba, who is imperious, really. I mean, if Arsenal win the league, I think he might win Footballer of the Year. I really do think he's that good, that if we do it, I think he might be the reason.
I mean, last week he had a performance against Wolves, which by his own incredibly high standards was a little shaky.
Yeah.
And I thought he was unbelievably good at Villa Park. I thought he was, throughout the game, that moment was obviously eye-catching. There was the other moment where he sort of had the ball and made two Villa players run into each other.
Just with his Jedi mind powers.
Yeah, exactly. One of the Villa players had no idea what happened. He thought Saliba had fouled him, so it was like appealing for a foul. And it was like, no, you're not getting that. There was an interception on the edge of the box when Villa had come forward. If you remember, they'd had a good run down the left-hand side, and he just read it perfectly, stepped in, took the ball, on the edge of the box, just snuffing out danger. I just thought he was... he's so good to watch. If you enjoy watching attacking players, everybody does. Everybody loves the skills. Everybody loves the goals. Everybody loves the flair. But, I think if you can't enjoy watching a defender like William Saliba defend the way he does, well, you're missing out because it's next level. It really is.
He is something else. That is for sure. And yeah, so trying to think. That was kind of it, wasn't it? 83rd minute, I think, was the Saliba tackle. And after that, it was relatively easy going.
And 3 points and a clean sheet and 2 more goals and, revenge, if you want to call it revenge. This was something I felt quite confident going into this game, I have to say, because I know that when this team suffers against another team, they want to put that right. And we've had countless examples of it during Mikel Arteta's time here, and particularly in the last 2 or 3 seasons, we've seen that. I think this was one of those where we saw what happened last season. We didn't like it. Yes, we rode our luck a bit with that Ollie Watkins moment in the first half. I think all credit goes to Raya for making the save in the second half. And then when we needed to, change something, we did change the dynamic, scored the goals. And I think on the basis of the overall performance, I think we deserve to win the game.
Yeah, I think so, on balance. But, these games are always going to have big moments like that decide it one way or the other, and you've got to make sure they go for you. And they did go for us here. I think it's really important, actually, that we won this game, particularly when you think of what we've got to come over the next few weeks. There could be very valuable points.
Does it set like something of a marker for, the way you're looked at? People were talking about Aston Villa in glowing terms going into this game because of what they did last season, because they beat us twice, because of how good they've been at home, because of the progress they've made under Unai Emery. And it was one of those where I think people were looking at this as a potential banana skin for Arsenal. Is this going to be an early season setback? I think we've, demonstrated that, we are a force. We're a serious team. And, it's not like anyone's going to be sort of, we're quaking in our boots now because Arsenal beat Aston Villa away from home. But it's like, okay, right, this is going to be tough, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, some good teams will drop points at that stadium this season. I'm sure of that. And it just comes back to where can we improve on last year? We didn't drop many points last year, but we dropped 6 against Aston Villa. Well, that's 3 back. So it's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Big step.
All right. Well, look, there's probably loads to talk about, particularly as we're going into the final week of the transfer window, and there are many things to be decided on in this week by Arsenal, inwards and outwards. So why don't we take a little break here? We'll have questions about that and more, I'm sure. So we'll do those in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where you can answer. I did it again. I fucked up the part of the first part where you question, we answer threads at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you're an Arseblog member on Patreon. James, this is episode 600.
Oh, wow.
A nice round number. So Thank you to everybody for being with us for that duration, if you have been with us for that duration. Thank you, James, for being with me for that amount of time as well.
600
600,
wow.
Yeah.
Days and days of our lives, probably.
Yes, for sure. Many hours talking into these microphones. We have lots of questions about transfers and stuff like that. So do you want to go first, or will I go first? What do you want?
Yeah, look, let's get into all that. So we had this one from 537 Smith, who said, "Goodly morning, guys. When I saw our bench on Saturday, I started to panic. I suddenly realised that the only player capable of affecting the game in an attacking sense was Trossard, which he did excellently. Our attacking depth worries me. Centre forward, right wing and right midfield. Are you concerned about the load the likes of Odegaard, Saka and Havertz will have to bear should we not make further additions in attack?"
Yes.
Okay, next question.
Yes, next question, please. Yeah.
I mean, we haven't mentioned Gabriel Jesus yet, have we?
No, we haven't. He was not available because he has a groin injury, which is being reported as not serious. Now,
but then Arteta did say in his press conference, well, we need to do the scans.
Yes, he did say that. And I don't know if that information is out there. I wonder, look, I'm not being overly cynical perhaps to suggest that Arsenal putting out an update on Gabriel Jesus, or, letting it be known it's not serious in the final week of the transfer window. If we are trying to bring somebody in, you don't want to let everybody know that you've got a big problem. I'm not saying that Gabriel Jesus has a big problem. It could be not serious. He could be back right after the international break. But is that injury just a little bit of a timely reminder that if you are going to be in some way dependent on Gabriel Jesus, it is a risk. There is an element of risk inherent with Gabriel Jesus simply because of the injury record he has had for the last 18 months.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. A timely reminder. And I think you take him off that bench and you take him out of the squad, and suddenly we do look really light. Because he's probably the first sub in at least 2 positions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's an argument that he's the second choice centre forward and the second choice right winger. And you take him out for whatever length of time, whether it's a week or whether it's a month or whatever it might be, we look light. Because also, I mean, what were the attacking options on that bench?
Nelson
right?
and Nketiah.
Nelson, Nketiah and Nwaneri.
And Nwaneri, yeah, to an extent, yeah.
And we expect Eddie to go still, albeit not to. Where was it going to be?
Nottingham Forest. Can I ask you a question on that before we crack on with this sort of analysis? I've seen him get quite a lot of stick online because personal terms couldn't be agreed with the player. And look, it might be about money, but it might also be a preference that if, the stories yesterday about the Nottingham Forest move breaking down were followed immediately by stories of interest from Crystal Palace. Yeah. So is it possible that it's not necessarily a case of Eddie saying, well, I want more money, or the money that you're offering me isn't good enough? It might be a case that he is aware of interest from Crystal Palace and has decided that that would be the move he would prefer to make, being a London boy, etc., etc. That's just as easy for it to be the reason behind his apparent turning down of Nottingham Forest.
It sounds like that's what's happened, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, from the outside, that appears to have been the case. I think if Forest were the only show in town, he'd probably do it. But it seems they're not. Whether Palace will match what Forest were prepared to pay, I guess we'll find out in the coming days. I mean, the advantage from Arsenal is that they can sort of say, well, this is the deal we agreed with Forest. That's the price. If you want him, that's what it's going to cost you. Now, the problem is if Eddie says, well, I only want Palace, then that actually gives Palace some strength in the negotiation. So we shall see. But I don't blame Eddie for not wanting to go to Forest. I'll put it like that. I think it's a bit of a mad club, to be honest. And, they've done a lot of incoming business in recent seasons. They've had managerial turnover as well. I think Palace are a much more stable bet at this point in time. I think Palace will be a better move for him. So
yeah, I do too. If it goes through, I think I can completely understand why he would make that choice.
Yeah, and it's London and all those things. And Palace have been interested in him in the kind of long term. It's not the first time we've heard their name in connection with him, even this summer. So maybe they've been there in the background and now they're in a position to actually do something. We shall see. But coming back to the wider question, do we need something else in attack? I think yes, and yes. I really do. And I honestly, I'm not the sort of fan, and people who've listened for 600 episodes will know this, who will say, you've got to get the checkbook out. This isn't good enough. Spend some fucking money. That's really not my vibe. But I do think we need something else. And could we navigate this season with what we've got and win things? Yeah. If we were really lucky with injuries, of course it could happen. But have we really done everything we can to close the gap on Man City, to overtake Man City and the wealth of options they have at their disposal? I'm not so sure. Yeah.
I mean, there was another question from Danny Banny on the Discord. Do we have to make an attacking signing next week to win the title?
No. My answer is no.
Right. I mean, we don't have to.
Yeah.
But I think we would have a better chance if we did.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And
I certainly would feel more comfortable about it now, about the prospect. Now, obviously, Arsenal don't do things to make me feel comfortable, or you feel comfortable, or any fan feel comfortable, right? They're not worried about our anxieties about who might get injured or what have you. They're making business decisions, but we very nearly won it last year, right? And with largely this group, and if City drop off a little bit, we could win it again. But like I just said, I just think there's more we could do.
Sure. But I mean, look, if Eddie, you talk about coming close with the group that we have, and that's absolutely right. And, nobody can argue with that. But what we've seen in the last few days is Eddie is expected to leave. So there's a gap. Fabio Vieira is going on loan. There's a gap. I know he didn't play a great deal last season, but he's still a space in the squad that we maybe need to fill. Now, you can make the argument Ethan Nwaneri is going to be the prime beneficiary of Fabio Vieira leaving, and I think that's true. Smith Rowe is gone. Merino's coming in. So there's a sort of, not a like for like, but there's that gap filled, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if Eddie goes, and we don't know what's going to happen with Reiss Nelson, and Vieira is gone, I think we absolutely need something else in the attacking areas of the squad to give us the best chance of winning the league, of going further in the Champions League, of being able to compete in both cups, which I think is something we want to see. And some people will say the cups don't matter, it doesn't make any difference. If you want to build a winning culture at a football club, which Mikel Arteta does, you take every game seriously, whether it's an EFL Cup game or whether it's a Champions League game or a Premier League game. And look, we know some are more important than others, but it is about, creating that culture of wanting to win, and players want to win things. They want trophies, they want medals, and cups provide a good chance of doing that. So I think based on, who might go this week with Vieira, with Nelson, potentially with Eddie, seemingly likely to depart, and with some concerns over Gabriel Jesus and his fitness Like if he stays fit, you've got a guy who can cover all three positions in the front three. But without him, you're very light, at centre forward because, you've got Havertz and then Trossard as a false nine because Eddie's gone. I think it would be a bit mad not to bring anybody else in the forward line before the end of the window. If we're really, 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 really serious about, doing better than we did last season, because the group that we had that came close, some of those guys are gone and they do need to be replaced / upgraded.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my personal hunch is I think Reiss Nelson might still be here come the closure of the window. And I think that the decision to let Fabio Vieira go is probably related to that in some way.
Do you think it's because there isn't interest in Reiss Nelson, or do you think it's because Reiss Nelson? Do you think Reiss Nelson would leave if there was interest?
Yeah, I think he'd like to go. I think he'd love to go on loan. Like if someone said, "Oh, Reiss, you can go on loan," I think he'd be over the moon. I'd love to know what he thinks about Fabio Vieira being allowed to go on loan, but I think the only suitors for him really have been clubs who haven't got the money to buy him. Or the willingness to buy him at this point in time. So
let me just sort of extrapolate a bit there. Are you not suggesting, but is it a case, do you think that Arsenal would prefer to sell Reiss Nelson? And if that is the case, should Arsenal not be a little more mindful of Reiss Nelson's stature in the game, in that he's been a bit part player at Arsenal for a long time and hasn't really played much in the Premier League? Would it not be more realistic, for example, for Arsenal to think, in order to sell Reiss Nelson, we need to send him on loan for another season so he can play and put himself in the shop window, and maybe next summer, based on that, there could be a market for somebody to do a permanent deal for him, whereas right now, because of how little he's played, no club is going to take that risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would be one way of looking at it, for sure. I mean, a loan is always a risk for a club because it can go well, but it can also go badly.
Mm-hmm.
You can also have a Kieran Tierney type loan where, the fears about you as a player are kind of confirmed and your market value actually diminishes probably over 12 months. And I suspect maybe the club have been a bit burnt by that experience and are cautious about how they use the loan market. As much as we might feel there's not a great market for Reiss Nelson now, if he has a bad loan and he gets closer to the expiration of his contract, there's a risk attached to that. So
I'd be prepared to roll those dice on Reiss Nelson.
Yeah. I think I would too, but I'm just explaining how they may look at it. I also think that there's an argument that you actually can't loan out Reiss Nelson now. If Jesus has got an injury and you've let Fabio Vieira go, I think until you've got something cast iron coming in, I don't think you can engage in a deal for Reiss Nelson at this point in time. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just look at the numbers and I'm like,
no, I agree. Yeah.
I think effectively that's why for me, I suspect it's a call between Vieira and Nelson about what to do this season. And
were you surprised by Vieira's departure?
Yeah, I was surprised.
I was surprised and not surprised at the same time.
Well, I was surprised because I always understood it was kind of between him and Smith Rowe. One would stay, one would go, which isn't the most ringing endorsement of Arteta's opinion of either player, to be honest with you.
Nice for Emile to score a goal for Fulham at the weekend.
Good to see. Goal as well. And really Alex Iwobi as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Former Arsenal boys living it up in West London. But I think maybe do Fulham want to buy Reiss Nelson? I mean, I don't know. It's sort of the new Portsmouth. But I was surprised about Fabio. I mean, I think I had a question here. Maybe let's do it now. This is quite a rambling chat, but then there's a lot to discuss, isn't there? I can't find it now.
Was it a question about Vieira?
Yeah, have you got one?
No, I don't, but it was just... I always remember something you wrote about him towards the tail end of last season where you basically said his performance...
Chucked him under a bus.
Yeah, you ruined him. You fucked his Arsenal career completely.
What did I say?
You said something along the lines of Vieira's there is some concern that Vieira's performances in training have not allowed him to sustain his whatever, his Mikel Arteta's opinion of him or whatever, something like that.
All that was that, I spoke about Trossard giving the right response when you don't play. And I think for whatever reason, Vieira hasn't produced that. And that's not just in terms of what he's done in game time, but on the training pitch as well. I think without regular football and without confidence and happiness, he has found it difficult to sustain his levels. You said,
I have it here, his performances in training have not enabled him to sustain his position in Arteta's pecking order.
Yeah. Well, I stand by that.
Yeah. I don't think you were being harsh or anything. It was no. But I also don't think you need to read between the lines too much, knowing the way Mikel Arteta operates. You didn't need to read too far between the lines to understand what that might potentially mean for Fabio Vieira, based on what we've seen happen to other players whose performances have maybe not impressed Arteta that much.
I can't find it now, but basically a couple of people said, do you think it will get him back? Like, do you think this is it? What's happening with Fabio Vieira? What's your gut feeling on it?
I think, he'll obviously come back, but will he come back to stake a claim for an Arsenal place, or will he come back to collect his things and go somewhere else?
We can post the things.
Yeah, we put him in a box. I would be surprised. I think he had chances. There were flashes of talent, flashes of ability. You could see there's a player there somewhere, but he was just never able to do it on a consistent basis. So yeah,
I don't think they've jettisoned him entirely. Like, I think Arteta and Edu will retain some hope of salvaging that sort of project. But I would be quite surprised if that's what happens. I suspect he'll go back to Porto and do quite well. And I think doing quite well at Porto will not precipitate him coming back to England, but thinking, actually, maybe this is the right place for me. You can have a lovely career at Porto, winning things, playing in the Champions League. It's a big club. And I wonder if going home, that was the club he was with since he was a boy.
Sure.
I just wonder, I wonder if he'll feel like this is home for me. And I think it'll be difficult. I think we may have sort of evolved and moved on by the time he's back with us. But, we saw what happened with William Saliba, right? Loan spells don't have to mean the end.
Yeah, they don't. But Saliba was really, really highly regarded and potentially a generational player.
There's that guy on Twitter who thinks that about Fabio Vieira.
Oh, God, yeah. He must be brokenhearted this morning. That's got to be a bit, right? It has to be a bit. Anyone that's been championing Fabio Vieira over Martin Odegaard, I don't really understand. But hopefully he's all right this morning, along with the guy who doesn't like the Goodly mornings.
I hope we see. The thing is, whatever we see of Vieira in Portugal, it won't give me that much confidence he can come back and do it in England, because he was brilliant for Porto before we signed him. So
it is a big moment for Nwaneri, though, isn't it? It does maybe speak to how ready they think he is, to fill that gap in the squad that Vieira has left.
Well, because I don't see us signing a number 8 apart from Merino. I don't see us signing someone who's like Vieira, in what remains the window. I think if we sign someone else, again, apart from Mikel Merino, it will be a forward, more of a forward than a midfield player.
Do you think it will be more of a
forward than Vieira is?
Yeah. Do you think it'll be more of a winger than a striker?
Yes.
That's my thinking as well.
I do think that. I think the striker thing, look, as we've said many times, if we could go and buy our own Erling Haaland, we should absolutely do it. But I think Havertz, Jesus and Trossard is a really interesting sort of varied trio that you can populate that centre forward position with.
Mm.
I think the problem is if you're doing that and you're considering Jesus and Trossard as potential number 9s, you suddenly start to look pretty threadbare on the wings.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I gather, Andrew, Mykhailo Mudryk may soon be available.
Really?
Can I tempt you?
Good for him.
Chelsea manager sort of hung him out to dry in his press conference. Basically said
again?
I think he was very good. Yeah, he did it again.
Oh, my God. I mean...
He's changed agents. I mean, I've spoken about it before, but he was devastated about not coming to Arsenal and joining Chelsea. And I guess we're seeing why now. It's really not worked out for him. But
No.
I don't see Arsenal going back there.
No, I mean, nothing he's done since he arrived in England, because a lot of that was like potential, wasn't it? The interest was what this guy could be, what they thought he could be, not what he was.
Yeah,
and I think we've seen too much of what he is to go back. So I don't think it'll be him, but I do hope we bring in somebody in those wide positions. Some interesting names doing the rounds. Rafinha, Barcelona, Adingra from Brighton I've seen mentioned, who's a very interesting player. So let's see what they do. Anything
pure
else?
gut feeling. I wrote this on Threads the other day, but pure gut feeling, pure vibes, no info. I do have a bit of a hunch about Rafinha, just because of how close we came before and how much I know they liked him. And because he a bit like Neto, left-footed, can play from the right, Saka style, but can play from the left as well.
Barcelona desperate for any kind of money.
Skins. Yeah,
they're standing on the fucking Ramblas right now, cap in hand, looking for coins. Little sign, please, a few coins. We need to register Danny Olmo.
I think anyone who tells you right now they know exactly what Arsenal are going to do in the remaining days of the window is probably fibbing a bit. I think even if you could lock Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein in a room with you and interrogate them, I honestly don't think anyone truly knows what Arsenal will do in the coming days, because I'm not sure it was ever planned quite like this. I don't think they thought, and what we'll do is we'll get to the Monday and we won't have a forward. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, and I honestly think they thought they'd probably be all right numbers wise. But I think what's happened with Jesus just means you have to reconsider that.
Yeah,
it's an alarm bell, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. So let's see what they do. They've got 4-5 full days basically. 4.5 days at this point to get something done inwards and outwards. There are other situations to be sorted out as well. I know we're not doing a lot of questions in this particular part of the show, so we'll do some quick fire ones as we get a bit closer. But there is a lot to talk about when it comes to what might happen this week in the transfer window. Goalkeeper, outwards and inwards. If Ramsdale goes, we need at least one goalkeeper and potentially somebody experienced to come in too. There is maybe a situation with Jakub Kiwior as well. So there is a lot going on, isn't there? Yeah.
Of those, I'd be quite surprised if the Kiwior one develops in time, in what we've got left. I just feel like, it might be something that gets revisited in January. My gut is that he'll stick around, but who knows? And then with the keepers, again, a really tricky one. Arsenal want to sell Aaron Ramsdale to enable them to buy their intended replacement, Joan Garcia. There isn't necessarily a buyer for Aaron Ramsdale. There's a few different clubs talking about taking him on loan. So what sort of deal can Arsenal do on loan? Can it get them enough money in the bank to go and buy a replacement? I'd keep an eye on Wolves just because they've got Dan Bentley, and he is, although Arsenal want him as a number 3, he's a Premier League number 2, right? He's played Premier League football for Wolves last season. He could be an emergency number 2 for 6 months at Arsenal or something. I wonder if they might be able to strike some sort of deal which involves a swap. You let us loan Aaron Ramsdale, and in exchange we give you Dan Bentley. Something like that. I mean, it's a downgrade, I think, but it's a downgrade to a player who wants to be around, which I'm not sure Aaron Ramsdale does at this point.
Well, he must surely want to go and play. So we'll wait and see what happens. Okay. Well, look, it's all going to play out over the course of the week, and there'll be plenty to get our teeth into there. Let's get on with a couple of questions then. I did see, let me see, this one from Ollie King. He said, I'm just wondering if you noticed before Matty Cash went off injured and was lying on the pitch, Kai Havertz seemed to notice Cash was keeping him onside and was waving his arms about to get the ball, standing 5 meters or so behind the defensive line. It was about 12 minutes into the game. I'm just wondering if you've seen anything like this before, or if you remember a goal being scored from something similar. Seems like Havertz is such a smart player, always trying to maximize the team's opportunity to score.
Yeah, I guess that's one of those restart moments, right?
Was it even a restart?
Or was it not a restart?
I don't think so. I thought it was very strange that the referee stopped play. I'm just looking at it here. Yeah, so Cash goes down, Martinelli cross, the ball's out on the other wing, and it comes to Saliba. Havertz has had a look and he sees that Cash is on the ground and he's standing there with 2 arms in his air going, 2 hands in the air going, play me the ball, play me the ball. And the referee blows the whistle and stops play for Cash to get treatment, which is really weird because not a head injury.
Right. I see. So it's not actually a restart. The referee stops it.
Yeah.
That is a bit strange, isn't it? I don't know what the rules are, though, that surround it. I thought, like you, it only has to be stopped if it's a head problem.
Yeah, play the whistle. I suppose we did play the whistle, but still odd.
I guess, cynical and intelligent from Havertz there. I thought he had an all right game, like Kai Havertz. Didn't think he had his best game. I was really struck by that one in the first half where he kind of went through and sort of didn't do one thing or the other with it. But, I still think we're a better team with him up front than we are without that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, what stands out for me, even on days where maybe he's not as impactful as an attacking option or an attacking presence, I just think the amount of work he puts in is incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just unbelievable. The ground he covers, there was one point he was back defending late in the second half. It's like, that guy just has an engine. You talk about midfield players having an engine. Havertz has got one for sure.
What about this question from Radio Nick Coffer? And Nick says, "Good morning, chaps. I go to sleep listening to a podcast. My podcast app then spends the night serving me up old Arsecast and Arsecast extras. I'm often woken in the night with talk of Bellerin, Aubameyang, Mustafi, lockdown, and so on."
Oh, Jesus.
Recently,
reliving all the good times.
I know. Recently, I woke up to Clive saying what a clever signing Willian was going to be. Sorry, Clive. We've all made mistakes. And that's where this question comes from. In this last week of the window, which transfer do you remember getting completely wrong? One you hated, which turned out great, or one you loved, who crashed?
Oh, that's a great question.
Hated who turned out great.
Hated but turned out great. I don't know, actually.
How did you feel about Jorginho when it was done?
It was more about the Chelsea aspect of it than Jorginho himself.
Right, okay.
But I suppose that is one that I didn't necessarily hate because it was sort of like, well, it's a January signing. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one I think a lot of people had reservations about. I'm just flicking back through other sides.
One I was obviously excited about when it happened was Nicolas Pepe.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the player, but obviously it didn't work out for him. Kieran Tierney is another one who, I think I was really quite excited about. Maybe that in part was due to, how poor we'd been at left back since Monreal went.
Absolutely.
Lucas Torreira might be one too. where I was very impressed early on with what he brought, and then it just fizzled out, didn't it?
Yeah, I think maybe this is harsh, but maybe Petr Cech. I think I had higher expectations of Petr Cech than what he was actually able to deliver in the longer term. I
didn't enjoy Petr Cech, didn't enjoy David Luiz at all either. That was one I hated when it happened, and I'm not changing my opinion on that. I know he had some good games, and look, he was really good in the FA Cup semi-final and final, so I'll give him his dues there, but just not a player I ever enjoyed.
We're going back away now, but I think I really thought that Jorginho might be good. Because Arsene Wenger had such a talent for identifying attackers, and the fact that he went for Jorginho, and it was like Hazard plays and he went for Jorginho. I know Hazard had actually turned us down. It turned out in the fullness of time, but I really thought, he might have sort of found another gem there. But that was wrong.
Yes,
that was wrong. On this, by the way, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think? Because assuming it gets done in the next couple of days, what's your feeling about the Mikel Merino signing?
I like it.
Go on.
I think he brings a seriousness to midfield. Mm-hmm. I think he allows us to have more variety in midfield. You could play Reiss, Merino, Odegaard. You can still play Partey, Jorginho, Reiss, Odegaard if you want. I think what Merino brings in terms of his ball winning, his aerial duels, everyone knows he's a duel guy. He's 28, he's coming in, he's going to hit the ground running, I think. I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of adaptation. He's got Premier League experience from his time at Newcastle as well, so he'll be well aware of what the league is about, and I just think his age and experience make him the ideal signing to come in and slot into this Arsenal midfield. Like, I get he's not the most exciting signing in the world. I get that some people might say it's a little bit expensive, but at the same time, this is not a team that requires major surgery, right? I don't think we're in that position. I think he's a smart player, has done it for Spain, done it for Real Sociedad in a very good period in their last few years. They've been very, very good. I like it, I have to say. I think we've needed a signing like that. I think what they tried to do was replace Granit Xhaka with Kai Havertz last season. Didn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out, but it has worked out well, obviously, with Havertz up front. And I think that Xhaka gap, if you want to call it there, was still there to be filled. So I like it. I don't know whether everyone will agree, but I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing him play too. It's an interesting one because it's quite... I'll be honest, I sort of find myself caught between two positions on it. I'm a little bit in two minds. I think he's clearly a really good player. And I see your point about, he brings physicality. I mean, the idea of putting him in midfield next to Declan Rice, two guys who are 6'2", 6'3". We can be potentially physically very, very dominant in that area of the pitch. I have a little reservation about the money and the age. It feels quite out of step with sort of the recruitment philosophy that's brought us to this point.
You say that after we've, been talking up Leandro Trossard for the last...
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, the other side of that coin is Trossard's impact, how good he has been. It's another grown-up in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued about it, basically. Like, it's not a signing where, it's all on a performance. There's no sort of in 3 years we can sell him. Do you know what I mean? It's not that sort of deal. He's got to play now and win now and work now.
Well, I think that's why we're signing a 28-year-old, because we need a player who can come in and do it now, rather than somebody who's going to take a little bit of time to, learn what Mikel Arteta wants tactically. I'm not saying he doesn't have things to learn, but I think his experience is such that, he's able, like you would bank on a 28-year-old being able to come in and hit the level more quickly than a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, for example. I think that's just normal.
So, very curious, and I wonder if he might be thrown in quite quickly as well. I don't know, but when you consider that aspect of him, I wonder, will his adaptation be quicker maybe than someone like a Ricardo Calafiori?
Yeah. What about, I've got a question here, seeing as we're talking about midfield, we had a couple of questions about this man. Duncan Roberts on Threads, who's Duncan Roberts 1, says, morning both, thoughts on why we've seen so little of Jorginho in the last few months. He's largely been excellent, and since Partey returned, we've barely seen him. Clearly, Arteta has his preference, but I would have thought Jorginho to come on the last 15 minutes would be a great sub, etc., etc. And on the Discord, Steddersaurus says, what role do you think Jorginho will play this season? I think that's an interesting thing to consider in the context of Merino and what he might do.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit sort of bemused by Jorginho's absence from the field. It did really seem like he had kind of almost taken that position for himself at a point last season. And it has become very clear that Arteta's preference is Partey. And I am surprised that Jorginho hasn't made more appearances or played more minutes. I think there'll still be plenty of football, cup games and, I'm sure the odd league game here and there. But I think Merino's arrival will potentially, bump him down the pecking order another notch. I wonder as well with Partey, is there a thing of like, he needs rhythm. He desperately needs rhythm. He needs games in his legs. He needs match sharpness and continuity. Some players, like, they need a run to get anywhere like their best. And I feel like Partey might be one of those guys. And so there's sort of the idea of like chopping and changing it and going Partey one game and Jorginho the other. I don't think that would necessarily help Thomas. So I wonder if that might be another aspect to it. But truth be told, I've been a bit surprised at sort of Jorginho's seeming demotion. Especially given the new contract and everything else. I didn't think Partey would be here at the start of this season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was why they gave Jorginho the contract, with the, maybe not the understanding, but maybe they thought they would be able to sell Partey, and that hasn't happened.
Final year of his contract, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, he'll probably be here next season, the way it's going. I keep thinking he's going to leave in the summer, and then he doesn't.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's another thing I've got wrong. Oh, our transfer predictions. We've got the joy of unraveling those.
Do we?
Next week.
All right. Okay. If we can find them again.
Hopefully not.
One of our kind listeners will put it together for us, I'm sure, and send us a message.
They've got them tattooed on their forearm or something. Just flicking through the questions to see if there's any we didn't cover. I had that Jorginho one as well. Lots about signings. Oh, what about this? From Mark Bambi. Goodly morning. When do we erect the statue for Ben White, and what will its pose be? Booting the ball at McGinn, chipping the ball onto Odegaard, casually tripping up Jimenez, or simply staring distastefully as he gives a post-match interview?
I watched him in the tunnel. I thought it was very interesting to watch him in the tunnel before the game.
What was his demeanour?
He was just looking at the Villa players like, ugh.
Right.
Ugh. Like, ugh. You see, like, do you ever walk down the street?
The same way Noni Madueke might talk about Wolverhampton.
Something like that. You walk down the street on a Monday morning and someone's puked in, the corner. It's like, ugh. A bit like that. I don't know what the statue of Ben White is going to be, but I absolutely back the construction of this statue immediately. I like this one as well, from Threads, from Tevita. He says, is Ricardo Calafiori some sort of Italian Ben White, a penne blanco of sorts, which I think is very, very good. He said, the cheeky thumbs up after the failed attempt to be rattled by Martinez and crew is amazing. And also on the Discord, Castle said, were you surprised not to see any kind of referee intervention with the Calafiori incident? Seemed in real time, the ref couldn't be bothered. And that was when he sort of was trying to pretend handshake Martinez, who put his hand in his face. And then the two Villa players came over and were trying to rustle him a little bit, and he just ran off and gave him a thumbs up while he was laughing as he ran away. I thought that was brilliant.
I did enjoy that, and it did have something of the Ben White to it, didn't it? Maybe those guys are kindred spirits.
Penne blanco, that's so good, isn't it?
Yeah. The question is, where will the Ben White statue be erected? Will it be at the Emirates Stadium or will it be Dubai?
On the opposition goal line, obviously. Just move it around every game.
Yeah, that's true. I think you should be able to pose with it as a harassed opposition goalkeeper.
Yeah. Neto, Bournemouth, he had a little run in with Ben White, didn't he?
That's true. Very true.
That was good. What else have we got? Have we got anything else?
I think the rest are all like transfer, should we sell Reiss Nelson? Are we going to sign a striker? Shall we buy Nico Williams?
We should buy Nico Williams. Can we buy Nico Williams? I don't think so.
No, I'm led to believe very, very, very difficult deal to do.
Yeah.
I know it sounds easy.
It just turn up
with a briefcase with 60 million quid in it or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I know it sounds easy, and it's something we all could do.
We could just
tomorrow.
Just go get your big bag.
One of us
cash.
must have a briefcase.
We can crowdfund it. We'll crowdfund a briefcase, one of those super cool metal briefcases that they always have the cash in movies, and then we'll crowdfund the 60 million to put in the briefcase. Then we'll crowdfund a private jet to go to Bilbao, and that's easy. I mean, why isn't Edu just doing this?
I mean, it does leave the small matter of the salary.
We'll crowdfund the salary. Seems pretty obvious to me.
Okay.
So very easy.
Yeah. Tell Elliot, sorry, this year the Arsenal Foundation gets nothing. We have to focus our energies.
Fuck them kids. We have to get Nico Williams in.
Yeah. They'll understand.
Of course.
They must be Arsenal fans.
They're Arsenal fans. Yes. They'll be fine.
Small sacrifice.
They'll be fine. All right. Well, look, there's so much going on this week. Champions League draw later in the week as well.
Oh, yeah. That's on transfer deadline day.
Yeah.
Too much. Too busy. And there's speaking of crowdfunding and fundraising, there's a Arsenal art exhibition for charity.
Yes.
Versus Cancer. Friday night.
Where is that on and where, when and where?
Oh, Andrew, don't ask me these things.
You can't mention it and not say where it is.
I know. I just thought, well, it's a busy day. It's at the Drayton Park, 66 Drayton Park from 7 o'clock. The first annual Gooners versus Cancer art fair and sale. Some great Arsenal-themed artworks, including a statue of Ben White harassing a goalkeeper. I believe. I
will bid for that. Are they doing phone bidding like Sotheby's?
Don't know.
Fuck. We better find that
out.
But
get yourself down there and find out. Obviously not you, you're in Dublin, but people who live in this country.
Yeah, who are close to 66 Drayton Park. Is that just someone's house or is that a venue?
It's a venue. It's
right. Okay.
The Drayton Park.
All right, the Drayton Park Arms. Okay, and it is, of course, in support of Gooners versus Cancer, which, is a very worthy cause, and Mike does a lot of stuff.
Sod that, Andrew. I'm going to have a word with Mike and see if we can get it all diverted to the Nico Williams effort.
Fair enough. I'm sure all of the contributors will be happy with that as well. When they see Nico Williams turn out against Brighton on Saturday, we'll have to crowdfund him a hotel to stay in or an Airbnb. There's a lot to do with transfers, isn't there?
Yeah, more than you think.
Jesus. All right. Well, look, stick with us during the week. We'll have lots going on. A little later over on Patreon, we'll be looking back at all the weekend's Premier League action in the 30. So please do join us for that. Patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.